Elena woke up before the alarm. The room was still dark, cold, and silent, except for the faint hum of traffic outside the window. Her small apartment smelled of cheap instant coffee and damp walls. The ceiling above her bed had a long crack that looked like a scar, one she had stopped noticing a long time ago. She lay still for a few seconds, staring at it, listening to her own breathing. Another day. Elena was 26 years old, and life already felt heavier than it should have. She worked 2 jobs. During the day, she cleaned offices in a business district she would never belong to. At night, she washed dishes in a small cafe near the metro. The money barely covered rent, food, and her mother's medication. Dreams were a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. She sat up, rubbed her face, and checked her phone. No messages. She hadn't expected any. Her mother was asleep in the next room. Weak heart, constant pills, constant fear. Elena had learned to live with the quiet anxiety that followed her everywhere, the fear that one phone call could change everything. She dressed quickly, pulling on the same worn coat she had owned for years, and stepped outside. The city was waking up. Moscow never cared whether you were tired, broken, or lonely. It moved forward relentlessly, swallowing people whole. Elena felt invisible among the rushing crowds, another face no one would remember. By the time she finished her first job, her back ached and her hands were red from cleaning chemicals. She stopped by a small grocery store, counting coins carefully before buying bread and the cheapest soup mix. That's when she saw him. He was sitting near the entrance on a low concrete step, wrapped in an old, dark coat. His hair was unkempt, his face unshaven. At first glance, he looked like every other homeless man the city had learned to ignore. But something made her stop. He wasn't asking for money. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't drunk. He was just sitting there, staring at the ground, holding a paper cup with both hands as if it were the only thing anchoring him to reality. Their eyes met for a brief second. Elena looked away immediately. She told herself she was in a hurry. She told herself she had nothing to give. Inside the store, she hesitated. She stood in front of the shelf, staring at the soup packets. One more wouldn't change much. One less meal for herself wouldn't kill her. She sighed, grabbed an extra packet, and paid. When she came back out, the man was still there. She approached slowly and held out the bag. "Here," she said quietly. "It's hot soup mix. You just need water." He looked up, clearly surprised. For a moment, Elena thought he wouldn't take it. Then he nodded. "Thank you." His voice was calm, educated. Not what she expected. "You're welcome," she replied awkwardly, already feeling embarrassed for making assumptions. She turned to leave, but something made her pause. "Do you need anything else?" she asked. He shook his head. "No. This is more than enough." There was something in the way he said it, like he genuinely meant it. Elena walked away, her heart strangely heavy. She told herself she'd forget him by evening. She didn't. That night, after her shift at the cafe, she passed the same spot again. He was still there. This time, it was raining. Elena stopped without thinking. "You'll get sick sitting here," she said, more sharply than she intended. He looked up and gave a faint smile. "Probably." She hesitated, then spoke words she had never said to a stranger before. "I live nearby. Just tea." To warm up. Silence stretched between them. Finally, he stood. "Only tea," he said. "I won't be any trouble." Her apartment felt even smaller with another person inside. She handed him a towel, poured tea, and watched him warm his hands around the cup. "I'm Elena," she said. "Alex," he replied. They sat in silence at first. Then he asked, "Why did you help me?" She thought about it. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe because no one helped me when I needed it." He nodded slowly, as if that answer meant more than she realized. That night, Elena didn't know she had just changed her life forever. She only knew that for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel completely alone. Elena expected him to disappear the next morning. That was how these things usually worked. You helped once, felt a brief sense of warmth, and then life pulled you back into its routine. Strangers remain strangers. Kindness dissolved into memory. But Alex didn't disappear. 3 days later, she saw him again near the metro entrance, sitting in the same quiet way, as if the city's chaos passed through him without touching him. This time, he noticed her first. "You shouldn't be out so late," he said when she stopped. "It's cold." She raised an eyebrow. "You're the one sitting outside all day." A faint smile crossed his face. "Fair point." They began to talk. At first, only small things. The weather. The price of food. How loud the city had become in recent years. Alex never complained. He never asked for anything. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, his words were careful, thoughtful, almost restrained, like someone used to measuring every sentence. Elena couldn't explain why she kept stopping. Maybe it was the way he looked at her, not like a woman to be judged, but like a person worth hearing. Or maybe it was the silence around him, calm and deep, so different from the constant noise of her own thoughts. One evening, she brought him a sandwich. "You don't have to," he said. "I know," she replied. "I want to." He accepted it with a nod that felt strangely respectful. Days turned into a week. They developed a routine. Elena would pass by after work, sometimes exhausted, sometimes irritated, sometimes close to tears. Alex would be there, always in the same place, as if waiting not for her specifically, but for the world to slow down. He never asked about her life, but somehow she found herself telling him things anyway. About her mother's illness. About the jobs. About how tired she was of surviving instead of living. Alex listened without interruption. "That sounds heavy," he said quietly once. "It is," Elena admitted. "But there's no one else." He looked down at his hands. "I know that feeling." She asked him about his past only once. "What happened to you?" He was silent for a long time. "I made mistakes," he said finally. "Big ones." "That's it?" she asked gently. "That's all I'm ready to say." She respected that. There was something fragile about him, not weak, but worn, like a man who had been standing in a storm for too long. His clothes were old, but clean. His posture was straight. Sometimes Elena caught herself thinking that, in another life, he would have worn expensive coats, walked with purpose, belonged to places she could only clean after hours. The thought made her uncomfortable, so she pushed it away. One night, rain poured down so hard the streets turned into rivers. Elena found him soaked, his coat clinging to his frame. "Enough," she said firmly. "You're coming inside." He hesitated. "I don't want to impose." "You're already wet and freezing," she replied. "That's worse." In her apartment, he stood awkwardly, unsure where to put his hands, like a guest who didn't believe he was welcome. She gave him dry clothes, old ones that belonged to her late father, and watched him carefully, afraid he might disappear the moment she turned her back. He didn't. They drank tea. Again. That night, something shifted. Alex spoke more. Not about facts, but about feelings. About waking up every day with the sense that something essential had been lost. About the strange relief of having nothing left to lose. About how anonymity could feel like freedom and punishment at the same time. "I thought stripping my life down to nothing would make things clearer," he said softly. But it just made the silence louder. Elena sat across from him, heart pounding. "You don't seem like someone who belongs out there," she said before she could stop herself. He looked at her, eyes dark and unreadable. "Neither do you," he replied. They laughed quietly, surprised by the honesty. From that night on, Alex sometimes slept on her couch when the weather was bad. There were no expectations, no promises. Just shared space, shared silence. Elena noticed small details. He folded blankets neatly in the morning. He washed his cup after drinking tea. He never touched her things without asking. One evening, she caught him staring at a framed photo of her mother. "You care about her," he said. "She's all I have," Elena replied. He nodded. "Then she's everything." Sometimes she wondered how a man with nothing could understand so much. Sometimes she wondered if nothing was the truth at all. But she didn't ask. Because for the first time in years, Elena felt seen, not as a worker, not as a burden, not as a problem to be solved, but as a woman whose presence mattered. And Alex, the man with nothing, began to feel like the most real thing in her life. She didn't know it yet, but she was already standing at the edge of a choice that would change everything. The call came in the middle of the night. Elena woke to the sound of her phone vibrating on the table, sharp and insistent. For a second, she didn't understand where she was. Then panic flooded her chest. It was the hospital. Her mother had collapsed. Heart complications. They were doing everything they could, but Elena needed to come immediately. She didn't remember putting on her coat. She didn't remember how she got to the street. The city blurred past her as she ran, her breath tearing at her lungs. At the emergency room, time lost its meaning. Hours passed in plastic chairs and harsh white light. Doctors spoke in calm, distant voices. Words like surgery, risk, and expenses floated in the air, heavy and cruel. Finally, a doctor approached her. "We can stabilize her," he said. "But she needs long-term treatment. Medication. Monitoring. It won't be cheap." Elena nodded numbly. She already knew. By morning, the numbers were clear. Even with loans, even with selling everything she owned, it wouldn't be enough. She sat alone in the corridor, hands shaking, staring at the floor as if it might open and swallow her. She had no one left to ask. No relatives. No savings. No miracles. When she returned home, exhausted and hollow, Alex was sitting on the edge of the couch. He stood up immediately. "What happened?" Elena tried to speak, but the words broke apart. She sank into a chair, covering her face with her hands. "She's sick," she whispered. "Really sick." Alex didn't interrupt. He waited. "I can't pay for it," she continued. "I've done everything right. I worked, I saved, I didn't waste anything. And it still isn't enough." Tears slipped through her fingers. "I'm going to lose her." Alex knelt in front of her. "You won't," he said quietly. She laughed bitterly. "You don't understand. There's no money. No time." He hesitated, just for a moment. "How much?" he asked. Elena looked at him sharply. "No. Don't. You barely have enough for yourself." Alex exhaled slowly. "Answer the question." She told him. The number sounded unreal, even to her own ears. Alex closed his eyes. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then he said something that made her freeze. "There might be a way." She stared at him. "What way?" He swallowed. "It's not ideal. And it's not honest. But it could help you." Her heart pounded. "Alex, what are you talking about?" He stood up and began pacing the room, tension visible in every movement. "There are programs," he said carefully. "Legal ones. Social, charitable, corporate. But they require status." "What kind of status?" Elena asked. "Family," he replied. The word hung in the air. "You're saying," her voice trailed off. "A marriage," Alex said. Silence. Elena stared at him as if he had lost his mind. "You're homeless," she said flatly. "I'm broke." "What kind of marriage is that supposed to be?" "A temporary one," he replied quickly. "A contract. I know people. Or at least I used to. There are resources tied to marital status. Support, coverage, access." Elena stood up abruptly. "No. Absolutely not." She paced the room now, her hands trembling. "This isn't a movie," she said. "You don't fix problems by pretending to love someone." "I'm not pretending," Alex said softly. She stopped. "What?" "I'm not saying this lightly," he continued. "I care about you. But I also know this wouldn't be about romance. It would be a solution. A way to save your mother." Elena turned away. The idea felt wrong. Dangerous. Desperate. And yet, "What happens after?" she asked quietly. "We separate," Alex said. "No obligations. No claims." She laughed bitterly. "So I marry a man I barely know to get help I don't understand, and then we pretend none of it happened?" "Yes." She closed her eyes. It was humiliating. Terrifying. But the image of her mother lying unconscious in a hospital bed burned through every doubt. "I don't have time to think," Elena whispered. Alex stepped closer. "Then don't think. Decide." She looked at him. At the calm in his eyes. At the strange certainty in his voice. At the man who slept on her couch and never took more than he was given. If I say yes, she said slowly, there are rules. Name them. No lies, she said. No expectations. No pretending this is love. Alex nodded. Agreed. And this is temporary, she added. The moment my mother is safe, it ends. Yes. Elena took a deep breath. Then we get married. The words tasted unreal. Alex didn't smile. Neither of them did. Because they both knew some decisions don't feel like hope. They feel like jumping into the dark. The registry office smelled of disinfectant and old paper. Elena noticed it immediately, though she couldn't say why. Maybe because nothing about this day felt clean or new. It felt heavy, like something being sealed rather than begun. There were no white dresses. No flowers. No music. She wore a simple dark coat and shoes she used for work. Alex stood beside her in a borrowed jacket that was slightly too big at the shoulders. They looked less like a couple and more like two people waiting in line for paperwork. The clerk didn't look at them twice. Names. Dates. Signatures. Do you agree? The woman asked, her voice flat from repetition. Yes, Alex said. Elena hesitated. The word caught in her throat. Not because she didn't want to say it, but because saying it felt like crossing a line she could never uncross. Yes, she finally whispered. The stamp came down with a dull sound. That was it. They were married. Outside, the sky was gray and low, pressing down on the city. Cars rushed past, indifferent. No one noticed that two lives had just been legally tied together. Well, Elena said quietly, shoving her hands into her pockets. That's done. Alex nodded. I'll start the process immediately. She didn't ask what the process meant. She didn't want details. She wanted distance. They walked in silence toward the metro. At the entrance, Elena stopped. You don't have to come home with me anymore, she said. This doesn't change that. I know, Alex replied. But thank you. She turned and descended into the station, feeling strangely hollow. That night, she lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling crack again. The same scar, same room. And yet nothing felt the same. She was married. To a man she barely knew. For money she didn't fully understand. For love that didn't exist. Or so she told herself. The first changes came quickly. 2 days later, Elena received a call from the hospital. Her mother had been transferred to a private ward. The tone of the staff had shifted, more attentive, more reassuring. She didn't ask how. She was afraid of the answer. When she told Alex, he only nodded. Good. That was all. He didn't celebrate. Didn't demand gratitude. He simply sat on the couch, drinking tea, as if saving a life was an ordinary task. Weeks passed. Alex moved in fully, though nothing about their life resembled a marriage. They slept in separate rooms. Spoke politely. Carefully. Like strangers sharing an address. Yet the apartment changed. The fridge was never empty. Bills were paid on time. Elena noticed her hands stopped shaking when she checked her bank app. One evening, she confronted him. Where is this coming from? She asked. You said no lies. Alex looked up from the table. I didn't lie. You said you had nothing. I said I had no life, he replied calmly. There's a difference. Her chest tightened. Alex. I'm not ready to explain yet, he said. But everything I'm doing is legal. And temporary. Just like we agreed. She wanted to push. To demand answers. But her mother was recovering. That mattered more than pride. So she let it go. The first time they went outside together as husband and wife felt surreal. A neighbor congratulated them casually in the stairwell. Elena smiled stiffly, her cheeks burning. At the market, a vendor asked if Alex was her husband. She nodded, feeling like she was lying to the world. At night, she sometimes listened to him move quietly through the apartment, washing dishes, folding laundry, fixing things that had been broken for years. He never crossed boundaries. Never touched her without permission. Never asked for anything in return. That somehow made it worse. Because gratitude turned into confusion. And confusion into something dangerously close to attachment. One evening, Elena caught herself laughing at something he said. The sound startled her. She hadn't laughed like that in a long time. She turned away quickly, afraid he might notice. But Alex noticed everything. "You don't have to pretend this is easy," he said gently. "I'm not pretending," she replied too quickly. He studied her face. "Then you're stronger than you think." She didn't answer. The wedding had changed nothing. And yet, it had changed everything. Because somewhere between paperwork and silence, Elena realized something she didn't want to admit. This marriage might not have begun with love, but it was no longer empty. Elena found the envelope by accident. It was late afternoon, the kind of gray hour when the light fades, but night hasn't fully arrived. She was looking for a receipt in the drawer under the kitchen sink, the one Alex used for documents he said were temporary. She expected utility bills. Maybe hospital papers. Instead, she found thick, cream-colored paper with an unfamiliar logo embossed in gold. She frowned and pulled it out. Her name was printed at the top. Below it were numbers. Large numbers. Her first thought was that it had to be a mistake. She read it once. Then again. Then a third time, slower, as if reading more carefully would make it less absurd. It was a bank statement. Not hers. Joint. The balance made her stomach drop. "This isn't real," she whispered. Her hands began to shake. She flipped through the pages. Investment accounts. Assets. Property holdings. Figures that belonged in newspapers, not in the drawer of a man who once slept on her couch with nothing but a backpack. She felt dizzy. The front door opened. "Elena." Alex's voice came from the hallway. "I'm back." She didn't answer. He stepped into the kitchen and froze. She was standing by the table, the envelope spread open in front of her, her face pale. His expression changed instantly. "How?" she asked quietly. "How is this possible?" Alex closed the door behind him and leaned against it, as if the strength had suddenly left his body. "So," he said softly, "you found it." "You told me you had nothing," Elena said. Her voice trembled despite her effort to control it. "You said no lies." "I said no lies about us," he replied. "Not about my past." Her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of rage. "You let me marry you thinking we were equal in this," she said. "You let me believe you were desperate like me." "I was desperate," Alex said quietly. "Just not in the way you think." She laughed sharply. "Do you have any idea how humiliating this is?" "I never meant to humiliate you." "But you did," she snapped. "Every day. Every look. Every moment I thought I was saving you." Alex stepped forward. She took a step back. "Don't," she warned. He stopped. "You deserve the truth," he said. "All of it." She crossed her arms tightly over her chest. "Then talk." Alex took a deep breath. "I used to be someone else," he began. "I had a company. Influence. Money beyond reason. I measured my worth in numbers and victories. I believed control was the same as strength." Elena listened in silence, her jaw clenched. "My wife," he continued, "was part of that world. When she left, she didn't just leave me, she exposed weaknesses. Sold information. Destroyed alliances. Within months, everything I built started collapsing." "So you hid?" Elena asked bitterly. "No," Alex said. "I broke." He looked at the floor. "I worked until I couldn't sleep. I stopped eating. I stopped feeling. And one night, I stood in my penthouse and realized I didn't care if I lived or died." Elena's anger faltered for a second, then hardened again. "So you played poor," she said. "For fun." "For survival," he replied. He explained how he disappeared intentionally. How he left his name, his accounts, his identity behind, not legally, but psychologically. How he needed to know whether anything inside him still existed without power. "I wanted to see if the world would treat me differently," he said. "And it did. It showed me who I really was without protection. And I was part of that test," Elena said quietly. Alex looked up sharply. "No. You were the reason I stayed alive." She swallowed. "When you gave me that soup," he continued, "I hadn't planned to live much longer. You reminded me that kindness still existed and that I might still deserve it." Tears slid down Elena's cheeks now, uninvited. "You should have told me," she whispered. "Yes," Alex agreed. "I should have." "Do you know what hurts the most?" she asked. "Not the." "Do you know what hurts the most?" she asked. "Not the money. Not the lie." She looked straight at him. It's that I trusted you when I had nothing. And you had everything. Silence filled the room. Alex walked to the table slowly and placed the envelope between them. Take it, he said. All of it. She stared at him in disbelief. I don't want your money. I know, he replied. That's why I'm giving it. Elena shook her head. You don't understand. I don't want to owe you. You don't owe me anything, Alex said. Not even forgiveness. Her breath caught. What do you want then? She asked. He hesitated, something rare for him. I want the chance to be honest, he said. Even if that means losing you. The words landed heavy. Elena picked up the envelope, then set it back down as if it burned her skin. I need space, she said finally. I can't breathe in this apartment anymore. I'll leave, Alex said immediately. No, she replied. I will. She grabbed her coat, her bag, her keys. At the door, she paused. You saved my mother, she said without turning around. I will never forget that. Then she added, her voice breaking just slightly. But I don't know if I can forgive you. The door closed softly behind her. Alex stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by silence, realizing that for the first time in his life, money couldn't fix what he had broken. Elena moved back into her old apartment that same night. It felt smaller than she remembered. The walls seemed closer, the air heavier, as if the space itself questioned why she had returned. She dropped her bag by the door and stood in the middle of the room, unsure what to do next. Nothing had changed. And yet everything had. She sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the cracked ceiling again. The same scar. The same place. But now the silence felt different, not empty, but loud. Her phone buzzed. A message from Alex. I'm sorry. She didn't reply. The next days blurred together. Elena returned to work as if nothing had happened. She cleaned offices with glass walls and designer chairs, thinking of the irony that she had once lived among people like this, without ever belonging. Her coworkers noticed she was quieter. At the cafe, she dropped plates. Burned her hand. Forgot orders. The manager warned her once. Then again. At night, she lay awake, replaying every conversation, every look, every moment that now felt poisoned by doubt. Had any of it been real? Her mother was recovering well. The doctors were optimistic. Elena visited her daily, smiling, hiding the storm inside her. You look tired, her mother said gently one afternoon. I'm fine, Elena replied automatically. But her mother knew better. You've been carrying too much for too long, she said. Even strong people break. Elena nodded, tears threatening. She couldn't tell her the truth. Not yet. Alex didn't disappear. He respected her space, but he was there, quietly, consistently. He paid her rent anonymously. Left groceries at her door without a note. Covered her mother's treatment without taking credit. When Elena discovered it, her anger returned, sharp and helpless. You can't buy your way back, she said when she finally confronted him over the phone. I'm not trying to, Alex replied. I'm just taking responsibility. For lying. For everything. She hung up. What hurt most wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the way luxury had stripped the warmth from everything. In the mansion, she had felt smaller than she ever did in poverty. In silk sheets, she had slept worse than on her old couch. Money hadn't made her safe. It had made her exposed. She thought about the woman she had been before Alex, exhausted, yes, but grounded. She thought about the woman she almost became, polished, silent, swallowed by a world that measured worth in numbers. She didn't know which frightened her more. One evening, a letter arrived. Not an envelope with logos or numbers. Handwritten. Elena, I'm not asking you to come back. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I only want you to know that everything I built meant nothing until I lost it. You were real when nothing else was. If you decide to walk away forever, I will accept it. Alex. She folded the letter slowly. For the first time since leaving, she cried, not from anger, but from grief. Because love didn't disappear just because trust was broken. It simply hurt more. Days passed. Then a week. Then two. Elena began to feel something shift inside her, not toward forgiveness, but toward clarity. She realized she wasn't angry because he was rich. She was angry because he had taken her choice away. If she had known, would she have helped him? Yes. If she had known, would she have married him? She didn't know. And that uncertainty haunted her. One afternoon, she ran into him by accident. In the street. He looked thinner. Tired. Less controlled. They stopped a few steps apart. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi." Silence. "I'm not here to convince you of anything," Alex said. "I just wanted to ask how your mother is." "She's better," Elena replied. "Thank you." He nodded. "I'm glad." She hesitated, then asked the question that had been burning inside her. "If you had told me the truth from the beginning, would you still have stayed?" Alex didn't answer immediately. "Yes," he said finally. "Because I didn't stay for you to save me. I stayed because you already had." Her breath caught. They stood there, suspended between past and future, both knowing that something fragile still existed, even if neither of them knew what to do with it. When they parted, Elena didn't feel relief. She felt something worse. Hope. Elena met her the following week. Not by choice. A formal letter arrived at Elena's apartment, written in precise, elegant language, inviting her to lunch at a private residence. There was no signature, only a name printed at the bottom. V. Morozova. Elena didn't need Alex to explain who that was. She almost refused. But curiosity, and something like defiance, pushed her forward. If this woman had already decided who Elena was, hiding would only confirm it. The house stood behind high iron gates in one of the quietest districts of the city. The driver who met her didn't speak. Neither did the housekeeper who led her inside. Everything was immaculate. Too immaculate. The living room felt like a museum, polished surfaces, expensive art, no signs of life. Elena felt out of place immediately, her coat suddenly too plain, her shoes too worn. Victoria Morozova entered without announcement. She was tall, composed, and perfectly dressed. Her hair was silver, her posture rigid. She looked at Elena the way one might look at a flawed investment. "So," she said calmly, "you're the girl." Elena straightened her back. "My name is Elena." Victoria smiled thinly. "Of course it is." They sat. Tea was poured. No one drank it. "My son has always had a weakness," Victoria continued. "He confuses emotion with obligation." Elena's jaw tightened. "I didn't force him into anything." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Didn't you?" The word stung. "I didn't know who he was," Elena said evenly. "And I never asked for his money." "That is what worries me," Victoria replied. "Women who don't ask are often the most dangerous." Elena laughed quietly. "You think I planned this?" "I think you benefited from it," Victoria said. "Which, in my world, is the same thing." Elena leaned forward. "In your world, maybe. In mine, people help each other without contracts." Victoria studied her carefully now. "My son was at his lowest," she said. "And you happened to be there." "Yes," Elena replied. "Because no one else was." Silence fell between them. Victoria took a sip of tea at last. "You don't belong in this family," she said flatly. Elena expected the words. They still hurt. "I don't want to," she replied. That seemed to surprise Victoria. "You're not ambitious?" she asked. "I am," Elena said. "Just not for power." Victoria stood and walked to the window. "Alexander built an empire," she said. "I protected it. I will not allow sentiment to destroy what remains." Elena stood as well. "Then you don't need to worry. I'm already leaving." Victoria turned slowly. "My son is not a charity case," she said. "And neither are you." Elena held her gaze. "Then we agree." The meeting ended shortly after. No shouting. No dramatic exits. Just cold certainty. Outside, Elena felt her legs shake as if she had run a marathon. She walked for hours. By the time she reached the river, dusk had settled in. The city lights reflected on the water, distant and blurred. Her phone rang. "Alex." She considered not answering. Then she did. "You met my mother," he said quietly. "Yes." "I'm sorry." "For what?" Elena asked. "For her honesty? Or for mine?" Alex was silent. "She thinks I used you," Elena said. "That I'm a threat." "She's afraid," Alex replied. "Fear makes her cruel." "So does power," Elena said. I never meant to pull you into this, he said. You didn't choose my world. No, Elena replied. But I have to choose my own. They ended the call without resolution. That night, Elena understood something clearly. If she stayed with Alex, she would always be on trial. Judged, measured, compared. Not by him, but by everything around him. Love, she realized, wasn't just about two people. It was about the worlds they carried with them. And hers was dangerously fragile. Still, as she lay in bed, one thought refused to leave her mind. Even under judgment, even under pressure. She had never felt more real than she did with him. The days after the meeting with Victoria were quieter on the surface, but inside, everything was shifting. Elena noticed it first in small, almost imperceptible ways. Alex's laughter was shorter, less confident. His eyes lingered longer on the floor than usual. His usual charm carried a hint of tension. They met at the same cafe they had discovered together months ago. The place felt smaller now, more fragile, as if even the walls had absorbed Victoria's judgment. I've been thinking, Alex began, stirring his coffee slowly, about everything, about my mother, and about us. Elena watched him carefully, keeping her expression neutral. Go on. He hesitated, then laughed nervously. I don't know if I can do this. Being with you, it's not just me anymore. It's my whole life, my family. They weigh on me more than I realized. Elena felt a pang of something she didn't want to name. Fear, maybe, or disappointment. So you're thinking of leaving? She asked quietly. No, he said immediately, but his tone betrayed uncertainty. I don't want to hurt you. And I can't hide from them. My mother, she's relentless. Elena nodded. You're not alone in that. But hiding doesn't fix anything. He smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. I know. I feel like I'm cracking. Elena reached across the table and placed her hand over his. The touch was small, but deliberate. Cracks can be dangerous, she said softly, but they can also let light in. Alex looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time that day. The tension in his shoulders eased just a little. You always know what to say, he murmured. Elena smiled. Or maybe I just say what you need to hear. They sat in silence after that, letting the noise of the cafe and the city around them fill the gaps. Elena realized something. Their connection wasn't just about moments of joy. It was also about holding on when the world tried to pull them apart. Later that evening, Alex called her from his office. His voice was low, almost conspiratorial. I've made a decision, he said. Elena's heart leapt and then sank simultaneously. Which one? To fight, he said simply. Not against my mother, not against anyone else. But for us. For what we have. Relief washed over her, followed by a creeping doubt. Are you sure? Yes, he said firmly. Even if it's messy, even if it hurts. I don't want to pretend or hide anymore. Elena's chest tightened. She wanted to scream, to laugh, to cry all at once. Instead, she whispered, then we start. They met later that week to plan their first real steps together, small, symbolic acts that would assert their bond in subtle ways. A dinner where Alex invited Elena into his home without warning, a walk through the park where he insisted on holding her hand in public, a late-night visit to a bookstore where they shared stories and dreams. But even as these moments deepened their connection, Elena felt the first real shadow of tension grow. Whispers in hallways, a glance from Victoria in a photograph at the office, subtle remarks from Alex's colleagues, all reminders that the world around them was watching, calculating, judging. One evening, Elena stayed late at Alex's office. He leaned against the desk, tired, but smiling. You make everything seem lighter, he admitted. You make me feel strong, she replied. Even when I'm scared. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Scared? Yes, she said honestly. Of losing this. Of being too small for your world. He shook his head. No world can make us too small, he said. But they can try. Elena nodded, feeling a mix of hope and dread. Love, she realized, was not just about happiness. It was about endurance, about facing the cracks and the shadows together. As she left that night, she looked back at him through the glass doors. He waved. A small gesture. But in it, she saw determination. And for the first time since meeting Victoria, Elena allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could survive the storm. The first crack had appeared. But cracks, Elena thought as she walked into the night, could be mended. Or at least, they could be endured, if you had the right person beside you. Her phone buzzed. A message from Alex. Tomorrow, we take the first real step. Together. Elena smiled. And for the first time in weeks, she slept without the weight of judgment pressing down on her chest. If you want, I can continue with Block 9 next, which will start intensifying the tension between Elena, Alex, and Victoria while adding the first real external conflict to their relationship. Do you want me to proceed? The next morning felt heavier than usual. Elena woke to the sound of rain tapping against her window, a rhythmic reminder that the world rarely paused for anyone's happiness. She sipped her coffee slowly, her mind drifting to Alex's message. Tomorrow, we take the first real step. Together. She wondered what that step would be. Meeting his family? A public declaration? Or something even riskier, something that would finally make them visible to everyone who might try to pull them apart? By mid-morning, Alex called. His voice was calm, but Elena could hear the underlying tension. I've arranged something for today, he said. It's important. Will you come? Of course, she replied, though her stomach twisted into knots. The plan, as Alex revealed when she arrived at the old pier by the river, was simple yet daring. They would take a small boat across the water to a secluded spot he loved as a child. A private place where they could speak without interruption, away from judgment, whispers, and expectations. The river was swollen from the rain, reflecting the gray sky in restless ripples. Elena shivered as they pushed the boat into the water. Alex's hands were steady on the oars, but she sensed a tension he wasn't saying aloud. Why here? She asked, settling beside him. Because it's ours, he said softly. No one else knows this place. No one else has a claim. The boat rocked gently as they drifted. Elena leaned back, letting the wind and rain wash over her. I've been thinking about us, she admitted, about how fragile everything feels sometimes. Alex nodded. I feel it too. That's why we need to act, before it's too late. For a long while, they didn't speak, letting the silence stretch between them like a protective bubble. But even in isolation, the shadows of Victoria's influence followed them. Elena thought about the whispers at the office, the judgmental glances, the subtle sabotage she had begun to notice in small, almost invisible ways. Victoria won't stop, Elena said finally, her voice low. She'll find a way to interfere. You know it. Alex's jaw tightened. I know. And I've been avoiding it, pretending it won't touch us. But I can't anymore. Elena's heart tightened. She had expected this honesty, but hearing it out loud made it real. Then we face it, she said. Together. He looked at her, his eyes stormy, conflicted. What if it's too much? What if I can't protect you? You can't protect me from everything, she said, surprising herself with her calm. But you can be here. That's enough. They reached the small island at the center of the river, a patch of wild grass and twisted trees. Alex stepped out first, offering his hand to help her. As she climbed onto the shore, she realized that the rain had stopped, leaving the world washed and raw, the clouds breaking just enough to let the pale light through. Look at this place, Alex said, spreading his arms. It's untouched. Free. No one can reach us here unless we let them. Elena let herself take it in. The isolation, the quiet, the raw beauty, it was exactly what she needed. But even as she breathed in the moment, she felt a flicker of unease. This sanctuary, beautiful as it was, also reminded her that the real world, with its pressures, gossip, and judgments, was waiting on the other side. Alex took her hands, looking at her with unwavering intensity. I want us to be honest. No more pretending, no more hiding. Whatever comes, we face it together. Elena nodded, gripping his hands tighter. No matter what. And then, as if the universe had decided to test their resolve immediately, the first sound of intrusion reached them, the distant echo of footsteps on the shore, soft but deliberate. They froze. The island was small, and the path from the main shore was visible. Whoever it was, they had crossed the water to reach them. Alex's eyes darkened. "Stay close," he whispered. A figure emerged from the trees, familiar, poised, and unmistakably deliberate. Victoria. Elena felt a cold rush through her veins. She had expected interference, subtle threats, whispers in hallways, but not this. Not a direct confrontation on this secluded island. Victoria's eyes swept over them, sharp, calculating. "So," she said, her voice calm but loaded, "this is where you hide." "How romantic." Alex stepped slightly in front of Elena. "Victoria," he said evenly. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same," she replied, ignoring him, her gaze on Elena. "But no matter. I see things haven't changed. You're still playing house, Alex. And you're still pretending this little girl matters in your world." Elena's hands trembled, but she forced herself to stand tall. "I'm not a child. And I'm not pretending. We're real. You just don't like it." Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Real? Oh, darling, reality is far more complicated than your fairy tales. You think love protects you? It doesn't. It never has." Alex's face hardened. "Stop it. She's not a problem. She's part of my life, whether you approve or not." Victoria tilted her head, her gaze sharp and unreadable. "We'll see about that." The tension crackled between them, thick and suffocating, as if the very air had become a battlefield. Elena realized something terrifying. This was not just about love or personal choices. This was a challenge, a test. One misstep could shatter everything. And yet, standing there, with the wind tugging at their clothes and the river stretching endlessly behind them, Elena felt a strange surge of clarity. She was ready. Whatever Victoria threw at them, they would face it together. The storm, Elena thought, wasn't coming from the sky. It was here. And they were standing at its center. The air on the island felt charged, electric, as if the river itself was holding its breath. Victoria's presence was suffocating, and Elena could feel her pulse hammering in her temples. Alex remained a steady shield, though the tension in his shoulders betrayed the effort it took to keep calm. Victoria took a slow step closer, her eyes never leaving Elena. "You think you belong here," she said, her voice silky but lethal. "But you're a guest in my world, and guests, well, they don't always leave intact." Elena swallowed hard, but she refused to step back. "This is not your world. This is our life. And we're not leaving just because you demand it." Victoria's lips curved into a smile, cold and knowing. "Bold. Very bold. But boldness doesn't equal safety." She circled them slowly, the wet grass squishing beneath her shoes. "Alex, I expected you to have more sense. I thought you were smarter than this." Alex tightened his jaw. "I'm done playing your games, Victoria. Elena isn't a game, and I'm not letting you treat her like one." Victoria's gaze flicked to the boat, the only way off the island. "Oh, Alex, it's too late for that. You've both crossed a line." Her eyes darkened, calculating. "And now, you'll pay the price." Elena's stomach dropped. Something about the way she said, "pay the price," made it clear this wasn't an idle threat. Victoria wasn't bluffing. "Alex," Elena whispered, "what do we do?" He glanced at her, then back at Victoria. "We stand. We face her together. No running. Not this time." The words were reassuring, but Elena could see the storm inside him. Victoria was smart, unpredictable, and relentless. And now she had them trapped on an island with no immediate help. Victoria tilted her head, studying them. "You have courage," she said slowly. "I'll give you that. But courage alone isn't enough. Let's see how long it lasts." Suddenly, she reached into her coat pocket. Elena tensed, expecting some weapon or device, but Victoria pulled out a small envelope instead. She tossed it at Alex, who caught it instinctively. "What's this?" Alex demanded, opening it. Victoria's smile widened. "Information. Truths you might not want to face. Secrets that could unravel everything." Elena leaned over to see the contents. Inside were photos, documents, and handwritten notes, proof of things Alex had kept hidden, small betrayals, long-forgotten mistakes. Her stomach churned. She felt dizzy. Victoria stepped closer. See, honesty isn't always simple. Sometimes it's devastating. Sometimes it destroys everything. Alex's hands shook as he sifted through the papers. Where did you get these? He asked, anger and disbelief fighting for dominance in his voice. Victoria's eyes glittered. Does it matter? The point is, you can't ignore them. You have to confront them. You can't protect your little paradise forever. Elena realized the weight of the situation. They could flee, escape the confrontation physically, but the truths in that envelope would follow them. Running would not erase the challenges ahead. They had a choice: confront the storm now or wait and risk it breaking them later. Alex slammed the envelope down on the wet grass. Enough, Victoria. We'll deal with it. Together. But you're done. This ends now. Victoria's expression hardened, though her smile never faltered. We'll see. You have no idea how far I can reach. Or how patient I can be. Elena's hand found Alex's, gripping it tightly. She could feel the trembling under her palm, a mixture of fear, anger, and resolve. We face it, she said softly, almost as if she were reminding herself. Whatever it is, we face it together. Victoria tilted her head and started walking backward toward the edge of the island. Enjoy your little triumph while it lasts, she said over her shoulder. I'll be watching. And when the time is right, you'll regret ever thinking you could ignore me. Then, without another word, she turned and disappeared into the trees, leaving only the echo of her steps behind. For a long moment, Elena and Alex stood in silence. The wind rustled through the trees, and the river lapped gently at the shore. It was almost peaceful, almost. Elena exhaled, her body trembling. She's gone. For now, Alex said, his voice tight. But she'll be back. And next time, she won't be alone. We need a plan. We need to be ready. Elena nodded, feeling both fear and determination settle in her chest. Then we prepare. Together. Always. They gathered their things and began the slow row back across the river. The sky had cleared, leaving a pale light reflecting on the rippling water. It was beautiful, but Elena couldn't shake the feeling that beauty was fragile, fleeting. They had faced the storm, but the storm was not over. As they reached the shore, Elena looked back at the island, now small and distant, and realized something crucial. Strength wasn't the absence of fear. It was facing fear, hand in hand, and refusing to let it control them. And for the first time, despite the danger, the threats, and the uncertainty, she felt a spark of hope. Not naive hope, realistic, hard-earned hope. They had survived Victoria today. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but together, they were no longer hiding. As they walked back toward the city, Elena thought about what had happened. The confrontation had shaken them, yes, but it had also solidified something stronger. They were not just lovers, not just companions, they were allies in a battle that had no clear rules. And somehow, that made her feel alive. Even with the storm looming, she knew one thing: they would face it. Together. Always. The city felt strangely quiet when Elena and Alex returned. The usual bustle of traffic and voices seemed muted, as if the confrontation on the island had shifted the world slightly, left it unsteady. Their apartment, once a refuge, now felt smaller, almost fragile against the storm still lingering in their minds. Alex sank into the couch, his head in his hands. I can't believe she had all of that. Evidence, photos, letters. How long has she been watching us? His voice was low, laced with disbelief and anger. Elena sat beside him, her hand on his shoulder. It doesn't matter how long. What matters is now. We know what we're up against. Alex shook his head, running a hand through his hair. I knew she was smart, manipulative even. But she planned this in ways I couldn't have imagined. And those secrets, some of them I thought I'd buried forever. Elena's stomach twisted. Secrets don't stay buried. Especially when someone like Victoria is involved. But we survived. That counts for something. Alex looked at her, his eyes dark with fatigue, but also with something deeper, determination. Survived, yes. But we can't just survive anymore. We need a plan. We need to understand what she wants and how far she's willing to go. Elena nodded. We start with understanding her. What does Victoria want? Control? Revenge? Or something else entirely? Alex leaned back, exhaling slowly. Control. Always control. She thrives on it. But she's also unpredictable. That's what makes her dangerous. We can't just react anymore, we have to anticipate. They spent hours going through every encounter, every word, every nuance from the island. Elena realized how much she had overlooked, distracted by fear or adrenaline. Alex pointed out patterns, subtle behaviors that hinted at Victoria's weaknesses. See this, Alex said, holding up a photo from the envelope. She's meticulous, but she leaves traces. Always. She wants us to feel the threat, to react emotionally. That's her leverage. Elena studied it. So, we stop reacting. We control ourselves. That takes away her power. Alex nodded. Exactly. And we document everything. Every move, every message, every sign. We turn her own methods against her. Elena felt a surge of purpose. Fear was still there, gnawing at the edges of her mind, but it was now tempered with strategy. They would not be victims. Not anymore. The next day, they began to fortify their lives. Elena changed routines that Victoria could predict. Alex secured digital footprints, strengthened privacy measures, and started looking for any allies who could help. Despite the preparation, tension lingered like a shadow. Every unexpected knock at the door, every phone call from an unknown number, made Elena flinch. Every glance at the envelope on the table reminded her that Victoria's reach was long, and patience was a weapon in her hands. One evening, as they sat planning, Alex looked at Elena seriously. We need to decide, do we confront her directly at some point, or do we continue to avoid her and dismantle her influence quietly? Elena considered. We can't just hide. That's not living. But a direct confrontation, it has to be when we're ready. When we've leveled the playing field. Alex exhaled, tension easing slightly. Right. Patience. Strategic patience. They mapped out possible scenarios, threats, and contingencies. It was exhausting, but it brought a strange sense of control. For the first time, Elena felt that maybe they could not only survive Victoria, but outmaneuver her. Still, late at night, Elena lay awake thinking about the island, about the power Victoria wielded and how close they had come to being crushed. Fear lingered, but it was now mixed with resolve. By the end of the week, they had a plan, a combination of observation, preparation, and controlled engagement. They would gather information, strengthen their defenses, and wait for the right moment to act. Whatever happens, Elena said, holding Alex's hand, we face it together. No matter what Victoria throws at us, no matter how long it takes. Alex squeezed her hand, a small, fierce smile crossing his face. Together. Always. Even as they reinforced their defenses, Elena sensed that the next encounter with Victoria would not just be a test of strength, but of trust, cunning, and resilience. And for the first time, she believed they were ready. The storm had passed, but its shadow remained. And shadows, she knew, could be as dangerous as the storm itself. The days following their strategic planning were tense, but seemingly quiet. Elena and Alex moved with deliberate care, checking locks, monitoring communications, and documenting every anomaly. Yet the calm was deceptive. Victoria never struck without warning, and Elena knew this lull was merely the calm before the storm. It started subtly. At first, it was small things. A message appearing on Alex's work email that shouldn't exist, a photograph slipped under the apartment door showing them from a distance, or a coded remark on social media that only someone watching closely could decipher. Victoria's fingerprints were unmistakable. Elena felt the pressure mounting. She's testing us, she said one evening as they analyzed the latest signs. She wants to see how we respond, what our weaknesses are. Alex nodded grimly. Exactly. Every move we make, she's observing, noting, and planning her next strike. But we're ready. We have to be. The first real escalation came 2 nights later. Alex returned from work to find a package on the doorstep. Inside, A single object, a small, intricately carved figurine of a chess knight. There was no note, no explanation. Elena examined it, her stomach tightening. "She's sending a message," she said quietly. "She's challenging us, testing our strategy, our patience." Like a game of chess. Alex's jaw clenched. "Then we play her game. But on our terms." Over the next several days, the challenges increased. Emails with riddles, surveillance photos showing them in ordinary daily routines, messages that hinted at secrets only Victoria could know. Each one was calculated to provoke fear, uncertainty, and mistakes. Elena noticed herself tensing at every sound, expecting threats in ordinary interactions. But she forced herself to remember their plan, observe, analyze, control reaction. She began decoding Victoria's messages, searching for patterns, clues, and inconsistencies. One evening, Alex called Elena over to his laptop. "Look at this," he said, showing a series of locations marked on a digital map. "She's predicting where we go. It's like a path she wants us to follow or maybe avoid." Elena traced the map with her finger. "She's testing our boundaries, seeing if we can resist her manipulation. Every choice we make, she calculates. But she's overestimating her control." Their strategy became more than defense, it became a subtle offense. Elena and Alex began feeding Victoria misinformation, deliberately leaving traces that misled her, creating a complex web of truths and lies. Each step was a mental battle, a psychological duel where every decision could tip the balance. Then came the message that changed everything. An anonymous email arrived late one night, containing a video. The footage showed Elena and Alex in their apartment, every corner, every object, every movement captured. The camera angle was unmistakable. Victoria had found a way in, a hidden vantage point they had never anticipated. Elena's hands shook. "She's inside our lives. She's closer than we thought." Alex's face was pale, but his voice was steady. "Closer, yes. But she still doesn't control the board." "Not completely. This is where we force the advantage. We set the trap." They spent hours tracing the video's metadata, analyzing shadows, reflections, and the tiniest discrepancies. Elena realized Victoria's obsession with control was also her vulnerability. She left clues, however subtle, that could be turned into weapons against her. The next challenge was more personal. A letter arrived, addressed to Elena alone. Inside were intimate details from her past, moments she had never shared, fears she had never voiced. The handwriting was elegant, precise, taunting. Victoria knew her deeply. Elena's first instinct was fear, but she forced herself to focus. She showed Alex the letter. "It's meant to unbalance me. But I won't let it. We analyze, we respond, we control." Alex took her hand, gripping it firmly. "We're stronger than she thinks. Every secret she knows about us is now part of our defense. Every fear she tries to use against us becomes part of our armor." Together, they devised their response, not confrontation, not panic, but an intricate maneuver. They created a false trail, leading Victoria to believe she had the upper hand while simultaneously gathering evidence of her intrusion and manipulation. The tension escalated to a breaking point one night when a mysterious figure appeared outside their apartment window. Elena and Alex watched silently from the shadows, adrenaline surging, recognizing the unmistakable poise and elegance of Victoria. She lingered briefly, her eyes scanning, a ghostly smile crossing her face, then disappeared into the night. Elena whispered, almost to herself, "She's daring us. Testing our courage. Seeing if we'll chase her or crumble." Alex shook his head, determination in his eyes. "We don't chase. We wait. We prepare. And when the time comes, we strike on our terms." As days turned into nights, filled with anticipation and calculated moves, Elena began to notice a shift. Victoria, for all her cunning, was predictable in her obsession. Every manipulation, every challenge, every intrusion followed a pattern. Elena and Alex were learning to read it, to anticipate her moves, and most importantly, to remain calm in the face of chaos. By the end of the week, a silent understanding had formed between them. This game with Victoria was far from over, but they were no longer mere players. They were becoming strategists, turning fear into insight and observation into action. And somewhere in the shadows, Victoria was watching, unaware that the duo she sought to dominate was preparing a move that could change the game. The day arrived with a strange stillness, the kind that presses against your chest and makes the world seem suspended. Elena and Alex had prepared meticulously. Every scenario, every contingency, every psychological ploy they had developed over weeks led to this moment. They knew Victoria would make her move, but this time, they intended to control the outcome. It began with a simple message, cryptic as always, appearing on Elena's phone. The final move awaits. Are you ready to see the truth? Alex read it aloud, his voice steady but tense. She wants to draw us in. She wants the confrontation on her terms. Elena nodded, her mind racing through all the evidence, all the tricks, all the misinformation they had planted. Then we change the rules. We decide where it happens, how it happens. They traced the message's origin, a digital breadcrumb that led them to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Everything about it screamed ambush, yet it was the only lead, and their only opportunity to confront Victoria directly. The warehouse loomed, its walls broken, windows shattered, shadows stretching like fingers. Elena felt the familiar tension in her chest, but it was no longer fear. It was focus. Alex gripped her hand. Stay sharp. We control this. Inside, the space was silent except for the faint hum of electricity from old fixtures. Every step they took echoed, amplifying their presence. And then, from the shadows, Victoria emerged poised, confident, every movement calculated. She was wearing a dark coat, her expression unreadable, yet her eyes glinted with recognition. Elena. Alex, she said, her voice smooth, almost teasing. You've played this game well. But every game has an ending. Elena stepped forward, voice firm. We're not afraid of your games anymore. We've anticipated your moves. And now we make ours. Victoria's smile flickered, almost imperceptibly. She circled them slowly, like a predator assessing its prey. Do you really think you've mastered this? That you understand me? Alex spoke next, unwavering. We understand enough. Enough to know that control isn't about fear. It's about clarity, observation, and decisive action. We've turned your manipulations into your weaknesses. Victoria paused, studying them. Impressive. But do you have the courage to follow through? The confrontation shifted quickly from words to action. Victoria lunged toward a control panel on the wall, triggering a series of lights and cameras. She had one final layer of observation, one last attempt to assert dominance. But Elena and Alex had prepared for this. Elena moved first, slipping past a hidden obstacle, her hand steady as she disabled the cameras and lights. Alex intercepted Victoria, their movements coordinated, fluid, a dance of anticipation and reaction. The psychological battle they had waged for weeks now manifested physically. Who would seize the advantage in the moment of confrontation? Victoria struggled, a rare vulnerability flashing across her face. You don't understand, she hissed. This is bigger than you. Bigger than all of us. Elena leaned in, calm but resolute. We understand enough. Enough to end this. Enough to take control of our lives back. With a final decisive move, they managed to contain Victoria without causing harm, a symbolic victory as much as a physical one. She sat on the cold floor, breathing heavily, the aura of dominance she had carried so confidently now fractured. The silence that followed was heavy. Elena and Alex looked at each other, a mixture of relief and exhaustion in their eyes. It's over, Alex whispered. Victoria's gaze softened, almost introspective. Perhaps it always ends this way, she murmured, a trace of admiration in her voice. You've forced me to see what I could not control. Elena nodded. We've all learned something. But fear doesn't govern us anymore. Observation, preparation, and courage do. In the hours that followed, Victoria agreed to relinquish her obsession with manipulation, realizing that her control had limits and that true power came from understanding and mutual respect rather than intimidation. Elena and Alex left the warehouse together, not just victorious, but transformed. The psychological tension that had dominated their lives had become a lesson in strategy, trust, and resilience. Outside, the city breathed normally, indifferent to the drama that had unfolded in its shadows. Elena and Alex walked side by side, their steps lighter, their minds clearer. They knew challenges would come again, but nothing would shake the foundation of their partnership or the lessons they had learned. Preparation and observation could counter even the most cunning adversary, and courage, when paired with intelligence, was unstoppable. As dawn broke, painting the streets in soft gold, Elena glanced at Alex. "We did it," she said quietly. Alex smiled. "We did. Together." And somewhere in the distance, Victoria watched from afar, not as a threat anymore, but as a reminder of the complexity of human obsession, strategy, and the unexpected strength found in facing fear with calm determination. The game was over, but the lessons would last a lifetime. Elena and Alex walked on, their bond deeper, their understanding sharper, and their confidence unshakable. They had survived the escalation, mastered the game, and emerged not just unbroken, but stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next.